Yeah, that'd be helpful. Um, so yeah, my role is NOAA Fisheries Office of Science and Technology Chief of Staff. But I would like to note that in addition to being here in that role, um, I'm here to represent Office of Science and Technology, but also the NOAA Fisheries Office of the Chief Information Officer, or OCIO. These are the two sponsoring offices, and I've been on the team that started building the vision. So I am here representing all of us. A little bit kind of more fun information. I've been with OST for about 10 years. Before that, for about 8 of those, I was a fish biologist. I worked with a survey of seafood processors. It was paper-based. I worked with a group after I became chief of staff. Now it is going to be actually on the computer. People can enter their own data. So that we're very proud of that. I was Fisheries of the United States co-editor, which dealt with a lot of fisheries dependent data and compiling a lot of statistics to make a good, useful report. Before that, I got my master's degree from SUNY Stony Brook. I worked with Young of the Year Winter Flounder. Before that, I did some shark research, and I also did a stint as a veterinary technician. Fun facts, the movie Jaws is what got me into marine science. I cried at the end and my parents were like, no, it's okay, everyone's safe. And I'm like, no, they killed the shark. Like, all they had to do was stay out of the water. So my parents were like, we need to take you to aquariums. And that's where I am today. Okay. Okay, so I want to start kind of broad and give you a little introduction of who we are, who Fisheries is as an agency. So kind of in the sake of time, we'll whittle that down to our vision and mission. And I'm going to read the mission out loud. I know they say never read from slides, but I always like it sometimes when there's a lot of words. That way I don't have to take attention to two things. So our mission, and the bold words are mine. I did that. NOAA Fisheries is responsible for the stewardship of the nation's living marine resources and their habitat. We provide vital services for the nation, sustainable and productive fisheries, safe sources of seafood, the recovery and conservation of protected species, and healthy ecosystems, all backed by sound science and an ecosystem-based approach to management. Now that mission includes a lot. From ecosystem-based fisheries management to climate science and research to protecting North Atlantic right whales and other charismatic megafauna. And as you can imagine, that encompasses lots of data and lots of technology, from AI and ML, uncrewed crafts, acoustic monitoring, just to name a few. And these all get us that data, in addition to data we get from fishermen and the fisheries industry itself. So please keep in mind, not only does our fisheries component have science, we also are unique in that we have a regulatory component, which actively has to make important decisions on all the data that we collect. So now you kind of got an introduction to fisheries. I'm going to bring us out a little bit. Broad NOAA data strategic goals. NOAA itself does have a strategic plan and a data strategy. So the vision team, we wanted to make sure that we could that our vision worked within NOAA in addition to fisheries. So we started with this data strategy plan from NOAA. And it has 5 tenets: leadership, governance, open data, building capacity, and collaboration. I feel that these are really strong components of, showing the importance of data NOAA-wide. And it speaks to the importance of people and technology working together to utilize these data resources. So then we thought, hey, okay, we've got the NOAA data goals. We have a description of what those goals would look like. What would that look like for NOAA to be successful in those goals? So we started with leadership. Both within the larger NOAA and fisheries organizations, leadership needs to show support and embrace the necessity of the larger data vision that is needed organizational-wide. Governance, that leadership support will then allow us to develop more organized pathways. This will help us handle incoming data and outline what happens with any data we collect. Open data. Sharing data openly with other organizations and the public will be expedited once a smooth route is established through leadership support and governance. That leads us to building capacity. Currently, fisheries has more high volume of data coming in. Once organization is established and we have known pathways, it will increase our overall capacity to collect, analyze, and store data nationwide, and ultimately make better decisions and aid those who need to make those decisions. In collaboration, having rapidly processed data will assist with better interagency communication and communication of that data, allowing for better management and better decision-making. Oops. Okay. So, this really speaks to the whole package, and it really gives us an idea of how to build this vision, how to get leadership on board to really get to a core matter of building that data culture within NOAA Fisheries. So why we're here? To unleash the NOAA Fisheries data vision, and that is information, science, and technology exist together to serve our mission. Fisheries commits to creating a culture that confidently embraces a people-first approach to data service and delivery by keeping information at the forefront of all that we do to ensure public trust through scientific integrity for mission success. That vision will help us really utilize data and will show what data can do for us, like allow us to deliver information faster for decision makers. In addition to timeliness, we can increase the usefulness of our data, ultimately modernizing the overall fisheries approach to achieving our mission. That vision, that vision is built on 4 priority focus areas: people, modernization, fair, and equity. People. Even though technology is of utmost importance in the data process, ultimately people will have to work with everything. Let's make sure that people are part of the system from the beginning. Remembering that humans are who generates the why, how, etc. behind what the data is telling us. And I also like to note, kind of as a side, if we're thinking about end users, keep in mind that end users also include staff. Like the staff of our agencies are also going to be using these data products, are going to be the ones who have to input the data, process the data. So they're important end users too. And that speaks to the overall culture that we are trying to, it's totally lost words, that we're trying to promote. There we go, yeah. Modernization. Keep innovating and using new services, techniques, technologies to improve upon how we collect and deliver data and information. Fair. It's great to have all this data, but we need to make sure that the importance of the data is known at every level and make sure it can really truly be used by all. In equity. These issues that we're tackling at fisheries are truly human issues. Climate, food security, healthy coasts and coastal communities all impact people in very strong ways. We want to ensure that people have access and use of our data universally, and that data and information are shared and accessible with all, not just a few. To get to those priorities, we also have 4 pillars of success. We have data governance, business operations, technical applications, and culture change and communication. Data governance, the application of rules, accountability, and standardization, to name a few, will streamline data collection and dissemination. Business operations, efficient business rules and implementation plans to facilitate the data vision. Technological application, utilizing new technologies and especially leveraging the cloud. And culture change and communication, implementation of open science, open data, and data skill assessments and training. By viewing the data landscape holistically, NOAA Fisheries can realize its vision of a human-centric, streamlined data enterprise that reduces time to science. And that is really our true main goal. So how will we do this? Our little small data vision group, we grew from a couple people. We presented to our leadership, we got them on board, and they're like, okay, go do this. We're like, okay. And we're like, we need to grow our team. So we added folks like Eli and Karen, and we started making a modernization implementation plan. Excuse me. So we came up with our fisheries data modernization strategy, excuse me. Its strategy is designed to build upon the NOAA Fisheries data vision and build those goals out faster. And to note, this strategy is a component of the draft 2023 NOAA Fisheries data strategy, which is a multi-year plan for organizational change, defining all that is needed to provide quality information and data to meet NOAA Fisheries mission priorities and elevate data to the stature of publications, including open data and open science initiatives. Really quick with some of our challenges and opportunities. So I just went over the how, this is kind of our why. So with an information first approach, Fisheries is implementing human-centered solutions and enterprise-wide data standards to answer some of the challenges that we have been known for and have encountered, siloed data and programs. You know, we have a lot of fisheries, and now every fishery has a different way of doing things. So it kind of turns over the years, every lab kind of starts doing their own thing. And then how do you make those data speak to each other? So how do we break down those silos and get programs, you know, playing well together? How do we make sure that things are interoperable and accessible? How do we, you know, what are our legacy data systems? What are they doing? How do we kind of move them to the future? And then so to do this, to kind of tackle these problems, we have to be strategic. We have to define a forward path. So these challenges plus the data vision equal our opportunity to reinvigorate the NOAA Fisheries data enterprise. And I do want to note here, you know, we don't want to make anything too easy. So this modernization plan does focus on fisheries dependent data. And this is due to the added complexity with confidential data requirements. Really quick, we kind of have two major data buckets, fisheries dependent. That's the numbers and the information that come from the fishery itself. So how much fish catchermen are catching, so landings, socioeconomic data from processors, that type of thing. Then there's fisheries independent, which is like scientific survey work. The modernization plan focuses on 4 data lines of effort. LOE 1 is strengthen and enact clear data standards and accountability metrics. And Karen will be speaking more to this. Scope and implement cloud-based solutions. I'll speak briefly on this. Fully enable open science, which Eli will talk to you about, and refine and formalize operating model for modernization. I'll talk on that briefly. And the really neat thing is that, like, we actually tied these lines of effort to those 4 pillars. So LOE 1, you know, data governance, it's right there. Cloud-based solutions, speaking to the technical part. Fully enable open science, culture change and communication. And then the operation model, business operation. So we actually put our ideas, we're putting them into practice. So some expected benefits of moving to the cloud, as you probably have already thought: promote transparency, minimize time and cost consumption, and we can provide a common IT architecture, security models, development tools, and a management approach. We need to do this not only efficiently, but internally, and we have to be better public stewards and deliver clear, consistent, and trustworthy information so we can protect and conserve marine life while working to become a climate-ready nation. And the cloud will help us do that. There are 3 objectives under LOE 2. Identify modernized architecture, implement cloud solutions, and then objective 2.3, which I'll talk a little bit more about, develop and implement an enterprise modernization plan for fisheries dependent systems. And this one we've started working on all 3, but a neat project that happened with objective 2.3, you know, there was a legacy data workshop. We have a group called Fisheries Information Systems, which is a group of other groups, program specialty groups that come together and solve different data problems. Basically, that's FIS in a nutshell. And they actually sponsored a legacy data systems workshop where experts in fisheries all over the nation came together and they cataloged their legacy data systems. And they really worked on, you know, figuring out the intricacies of these data, excuse me, the maturity of the use of them, which ones aren't as mature, which ones have high impacts. And the discussions at this workshop are now driving development of the plan to implement the excuse me, so excited. So implement the enterprise modernization plan. The results from that workshop are informing that modernization plan. And it was also including best practice recommendations for all aspects of that modernization, such as establishing product requirements, project management needs, budgeting and contracting to create flexible, supportable products, and a toolkit to help all this happen. The ultimate goal is to support multi-region projects that take a standardized approach to modernization, as well as implementing national or centralized solutions to support these efforts. Just really quick on LOE 4, we're still actively developing this one, but this one kind of is going to be like the glue that keeps it all together. It's like the chocolate and the peanut butter coming together to make something great. So it weaves the other LOEs together, and it includes 4 objectives. Elevate the stature of data to be on par with research communication, like research publications and research products. Like, we want data out there, and we want it out there and proud, and people to be able to get it and excited for it. Define a modernization business operating model that is agile as our data. Develop data management, IT expertise requirements, talking about some exciting programs in surveying staff to see where kind of competency levels are, and then using that information to build training programs. So we have the agile staff to do the agile work, and then define customer relationship models. So some other, some additional actions that Fisheries is currently undertaking to work on these modernization plans and this vision. As I spoke before, we have met with our leadership. Our leadership is on board, which is great. We're also investing around $18 million in data modernization. We received money from IRA for climate ready fisheries, and we are going to use that opportunity to invest in data modernization. And that is going to include open science and mandatory government and IRA project plans. So if you're going to get IRA project plans, you need to tell us how you're going to govern your data. So this will result in a transformation and modernization of NIMS through a sustainable business model, data information systems, standards, and best practices with an open science framework that is ready to work for science and decision makers in a responsive and innovative environment. I also kind of wanted to briefly thank some people. Kelly and Lisa. Kelly did some great graphics on this presentation, and Lisa helped with talking points. Nancy Majower, Nori Soji, Evan Howell, they let me represent them today, and they also reviewed the presentation, and Eli and Karen for allowing me to join their panel. And we are going to hold questions at the end. We do have a Slido link that Eli shared at the beginning. LE1. No, that's the next one after me. This one? Nope. I think they just might be this, and then you just need to start the.
Good afternoon. Oops. Can you hear? Let me know. Okay. My name is Karen Sender, and I am the currently acting Assistant Chief Data Officer for NOAA Fisheries. But I'm also the information architect for the Fisheries Enterprise, and lead the Fisheries Enterprise Data Management Program. My past, if I may just take a minute to explain my history here, since Melissa did. I have worked at fisheries for about 20 years. I came from the Pacific Islands before I went to headquarters at Washington, D.C. And at the Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center, I worked in international reporting, and I spent a lot of my time trying to munch data from different resources to get them to connect to each other in a sensible and reproducible way. And every time we had to do an annual report, I had to start that process over again. There isn't a step in our road here that I have not bled. An interesting fact about myself, before I came to fisheries, I worked at the University of Hawaii in marine geophysics, and I went out on ships, research ships, for a very long time. And probably the most fascinating sea story I can tell is I was on a cruise with a Bob Ballard to find the USS Yorktown that sank in the Battle of Midway, and I picked the site. And that is another data, success, because I was determined to listen to the customer, who was Bob Ballard, bless his soul, and I knew our system, seafloor mapping system, and I knew that it could almost do what he wanted. And I knew that if I went and tweak the code just a little bit, I might be able to identify from the seafloor maps what his criteria that he gave me. Now, when you listen to the customer, you may think that you know what they want, and sometimes you do, but you have to listen to the customer. And so I have great stories about that whole thing, and probably of the other many, many years that we can't talk about until after 5 o'clock. But thank you for indulging me in telling my story here. Okay, today I'm presenting on the line of effort 1, and what those goals and objectives and tasks are, and how those this modernization plan aligns with our overall data strategy, as I was talking about in the last session, and what the role of data governance and our enterprise data management program plays in supporting this modernization plan. So for context, I just want to highlight that this is from looking at Melissa's slide here. I will cover this one line of effort. So this is about strengthening and enacting clear data standards and accountability metrics. And, the goal is to establish clear governance framework. We've been working on that, and to develop and implement clear standards and policies that are enabled by training opportunities, the culture change that Eli is going to talk about, our new data governance framework, and all the other parts of this modernization plan. And I will go through these objectives. Objective 1 is to support a regionally centric fisheries data governance framework. As I said, we've been working on this for a while. Doing modern things with data requires modernizing your governance. The tasks here are to support the fisheries data governance, and we have leadership buy-in on that now, and create and implement a fisheries metadata governance policy. We don't often talk about this because we talk about data documentation, we talk about metadata, but we don't talk very much about governing our metadata. You know, when you have data governance, you are not just governing your data, you are governing your metadata too. And this will allow us to have higher expectations, require peer review and sign off on our metadata, and to require it to be reviewed and more frequently. There are other data policies that we need to look at for fisheries. We have, as Melissa has presented to you, and I touched on in the last session, we have special needs at fisheries with data, a vast amount of confidential data that cannot be released and without great effort to summarize it, to remove business intelligence and trade secrets. And so with the recently released NOAA handbook with all of their data policies, which we were part of developing, by the way, we will look at each one to see if we have to have additional guidance or policies to accommodate our own data situation. And that is for data management, planning, data sharing, and data preservation and archiving in particular. I do want to mention that we are all committed at Fisheries to start doing data management planning at the beginning, not at the end of a data collection. This will be quite revolutionary. And then we are going to have a real concerted effort to implement those policies and track them with metrics, and our data governance bodies will help us with that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The next objective is to ensure that our data assets are inventoried and fully documented. Because of the first round of PAR, Fisheries was unique in the NOAA line offices that it created a national plan for implementing PAR requirements for data. That then we had regional plans for those, and we tracked them. And this responsibility was in leaders' performance plans and in the actual data stewards and data managers plans, and that I recommend people do. So we have a lot of metadata and data inventorying done from that first pass with PAR, but now it's time to go through that again and make sure that it's up to date. And that really covers that. The one additional thing is that we really need to do a better job of categorizing our data so that we're labeling it better with keywords, so that people can easily search it. Fisheries has its own metadata catalog. It's import as an information portal, not importing it. And if you want to know about that, you can just Google it. You can get a lot of information. Fisheries data is right there, and it's it's indexed by Google. Our metadata is all harvested at the NOAA level and Department of Commerce level. Okay, next, identify and develop data standards to enable interoperability and sharing. And we have a lot of work to do. We are surveying what standards we have. There's actually an effort at NOAA to do this that we will tag on to. And then when we talk about standards, it's all, the standards that we need to have for information management and data management, whether it's standards for APIs or services or, formats of data or, how we name data. We want to assess how to publish those standards, on platforms like NEAM, the National Information Exchange Model, so that while we use the communities to develop standards, we are actually publishing them so that people can convert to those standards or create crosswalks to use those standards, so that as soon as possible, as many standards we have, they're actually implemented as soon as possible. I just want to touch on the data sharing standards a little bit, because this is not that simple. We have to have data sharing plans at a very high level because of our special regulations. And we are in a situation where it is not that straightforward to get data to each other, as Melissa said. You can be on the other side of a cubicle wall of another data program, and our users would not be able to share data with each other, and much less with our partners, our fishery information networks, or our cross-regional data programs. It is frustrating and time-consuming and inefficient that we have to, not be able to connect data in a way that we can access it quickly or at all. Now, this modernization plan and everything we're talking about today aligns with the overarching fisheries data strategy, as I talked about in the last section, which of course aligns very closely with the NOAA data strategy, but this is more on the ground. We have ordered these goals in a way that implies precedence. We put data culture at the top to foster a decision-driven data culture, because if you do nothing else, and all the other goals and objectives, which I won't cover the objectives today, are very, very important, but the data culture piece is so critical to setting the stage and getting our workforce and our leadership to be able to be open to doing the best they can with the data in all parts and learning new technologies and new skills, but also critically understanding where they contribute, whether they are a data technician or a data owner. I hate to use that term, that they are critical in our every step of the way of getting data to decisions and out to the public. I just touched on leadership is critical here, that they have some things that they can do to help us in every one of these areas. We need their support, and certain changes really need to be made to be able to, move us forward from where we are. Data governance, as I touched on, is critical, not just to be creating standards, but to fully contribute and be actionable for governing both the data and metadata. Critically, we have identified that we need to focus on our collaborations and partnerships, and to strengthen and expand internal and external collaborations in order to involve our stakeholders in the process so that we understand their needs, and we are giving in a fulfilling their needs, not just at the end and giving them a product that they were maybe don't understand and doesn't really, we have not confirmed that it is fitting their needs. And finally, modernizing our whole data life cycle, and including so that we have the tools, enterprise tools, everything we need, and we are set to actually leverage the advanced data technologies. I would just want to touch a little bit about our fisheries, regional and national data governance. This is our new model. We have, effectively 6 regions, if we count our headquarters as a region, where we have data officers in regional data officers that will lead up their own data governance in their region. But those data officers come together as the National Fisheries Data Governance Committee, and we then can work together and really know the issues, problems, and opportunities that we need to address in a collaborative way. This data governance is fairly formal, and yet it is very based on cooperation, collaboration, and trust. And we have made great progress on that. A couple of regions we still have to go, but it's going really well. The role of the Data Governance Committee, we've touched on the policy aspects of this, but also they will be tracking this and facilitating implementation of this overall strategy, and of course helping with this modernization plan. We are going to be doing, in the national governance, developing data quality, standards that are and methodologies, an actual data quality framework, so that we can have consistency and be able to not just give people data, but they know the quality of that data, and they can make choices of how much that value that data is to them. We've touched on the privacy and security because of our confidential data. We have to get consistency on how we handle that, the rules to make that data be not as confidential, so we can share as much data as fast as we can. And data governance will help us identify enterprise tools that will help them, and we have built some now, and we are collaborating at the NOAA level on some of those tools. And finally, again, stakeholder engagement and communication, and the ever boring but very important compliance and auditing. Also helping critical with this effort is our Fisheries Enterprise Data Management Program. It has been around since 2008, but its role is to be a facilitator and collaborator, and often we'll have to, the EDM team will have to actually, lead the development of standards and do the grunt work. But this is, it touches on data governance and the applications, analytics, our partnerships, our ever important data culture, life cycle, and our workforce development, and just maintaining everything, for this enterprise data management program. And its role, I think I've already touched on, it is about helping all of these things to happen, and to directly support the data governance committees on the national and regional level. And we are working on this now to plan and execute data maturity, data literacy, and data skills assessments. We have a team that is providing metadata mentoring and training to our fisheries staff. And, again, to, really gather and make sure that we are reporting on our progress metrics. Thank you. That one.
All right. Well, glad to see everyone. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. I'm not going to talk so much about data. I'm going to be talking about people and the staff who are using the data. But I just want to back up for just a moment. And for those of you who don't know that the National Marine Fisheries Service was established in 1871. We're the oldest federal agency for conservation and environmental research. It's been around a long time. And as Melissa said in our introduction about our mission is to be stewards of our marine resources. And this data modernization that we're doing, we're really passionate about it. It's a lot of work. And why are we doing all of this? Karen talked about the challenges we face, the not being able to share data from one cubicle to the next. I mean, I don't know about other federal agencies. We're definitely very, very siloed each. So we have a science wing and a regulatory side. And our science side does research to support our best available science to make decisions. But that's separated. But then even within our 6 science centers that are distributed around the country, those are very siloed. Within our science centers, we're separated into divisions, and those will be very siloed. And so it's really hard even to talk with each other, communicate with each other. And this is causing us a lot of difficulties. And it's a big lift. What this group, that team of people that Melissa put up at the end of hers, it's a big lift from all of us, but we're really passionate about it because the ocean's changing. The ocean is changing, and we see it, and it affects our work to be stewards. We see it every year in the decisions we have to make. We have to consider the effects of ocean climate change, and it's real. It's making big changes. And in the last talk, you're going to hear about some of the huge challenges we face to create our climate ready models. But that's just one element. So I'm going to talk today about helping staff, the individual staff, and the challenges that individual staff face in their work in adopting open science. So a little bit about me. Starting October 1, I'll be full-time as the lead of the NOAA Fisheries Open Science Initiative. This is an initiative that is coming from our leadership. I saw a question on there. How did you get leadership buy-in in this effort, and also the effort that Karen is talking about? And it's by not giving up. It's by just not giving up, and keep going and not giving up, and finding people like the people that you see here who have the same passion that you do and can keep you going when you feel like it's hopeless. I've also been the co-lead with Julie here from Openscapes the last 3 years, who has been doing work with us. So you're going to hear a lot about that. I have been with NOAA for 25 years, working mainly on Endangered Species Act issues in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of salmon, killer whales, stellar sea lions, that kind of thing. But I'm actually an applied mathematician, and I have a degree in mechanical engineering, which, I'm trained as an engineer. I do a lot of algorithms for multivariate time series. That's what I did before I did what I'm doing right now. Another interesting thing about me, I've been involved since 2018 in a collaborative project with India and helping with open science training in statistical tools, training and how to use remote sensing data. In India, I'm going back and I'm spending all of September there. And a really cool thing is NOAA pays me to do that as part of our capacity building. So, okay. So let's talk about this line of effort number 3, fully enable open science. So this talk is really going to be pretty high level about like why we approached it the way we're doing it. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. I'm going to talk about why we chose to do it the way we are doing it. Before I do that, though, I have one slide with a lot of words. Oh, that comes next. Okay, first off, in terms of that graph that Karen was showing, I'm talking about the data science and analytics applications and tech. So we've been hearing at this conference a lot of talks about the data, getting data out to people. I'm a little bit downstream of that. I'm talking about we take that data, we're going to take that data and do something with it. And that data science and analytics capabilities. And I'm going to be talking mainly about the humans, the people who need to be doing those analytics and how we get them the skills, not just the skills, but all the things they need to get better at that. That's where I am on this thing. So it's not a lot of data stuff. Okay, so here's my one wordy slide here. And I wanted to address this, why fully enable open science? Why is this like one of those 4 big lines of effort? So I'm going to kind of read this, but also summarize it. So open science practices, we know they increase reproducibility and efficiency in scientific research. That's known. Lots of work has shown that. And we're required to have transparency and trust in the science that underpins regulatory decisions. Regulatory decisions is something our agency does. However, our workflows within our agencies are fundamentally opaque and non-reproducible. Ouch, but if you're honest, that's the truth. And if you have not been following the reproducibility crisis and you're in the federal agencies, I would suggest you sort of follow some of the recent high-profile papers that have shown that even when you have the raw data within a scientific paper and you have the description of the written methods, you can't fully reproduce the results. And this has been shown. There have been quite a few papers have come out and they've only been able to reproduce it in like 25%. And there was a recent paper showing this in regulatory decisions in water resources. This is coming down the pike. Once this becomes better known, we are going to be required to show our code, our workflows so that we can reproduce it. That's going to happen. It's not going to happen next year. Maybe it's not going to happen until 5 years out, but it's going to happen. And it's going to take a long time to get our staff up there, right? It's going to be the current staff right now who need to have those skills. We've got to figure out how to train them to be ready when this comes. So we need to embrace open science practices. We need to train our staff in this. And this is going to increase the rigor and reliability of scientific research also, but it's also going to reduce staff time and costs. We're going to be a lot more efficient and people will have more trust in our science when we can be more transparent. Okay, so that's my elevator pitch. All right, so great, you're convinced. I mean, if you're here, you're already convinced, right? You're at the open science themed conference. But how do we actually do it, right? Like on the ground, how are we going to make this happen? So I'm going to show you how, but there are two kind of big ideas that are underpinning this, and that like when we are thinking about how we're going to do something, we're asking these questions like, are we taking into consideration these principles? So one principle is from these ideas of diffusion of innovation. There's a really cool book called Crossing, it's an iconic book, Crossing the Chasm. It's actually about marketing, but it's really, these ideas are used a lot and when people are thinking about organizational change. And so 3 key principles here. 1, solve problems that are causing pain. If you're trying to do organizational change, that requires a lot of work, and the people have to do the work. And if you don't pick something that is hard for them, that they are truly motivated to put the effort into, you're just making things really hard for yourself. So find something that causes a lot of pain and start there. So this is like how you're going to cross the chasm. Second, you need to lower barriers to adoption. And then break down barriers to information spread. These are 3 really key ideas. And then there's all these ideas about how do you get, so these things, when you get organizational change, you need the team to get into these cycles of continuous improvement. They need to start rolling the ball and getting that. In Openscapes, it's the flywheel. You can also call it the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Yes, cycle. Get that cycle going. You need the team getting going on that. And there's, I've adapted this from the Agile Manifesto, but these ideas are found all over philosophies about getting teams onto these continuous improvement cycles. So first thing, you got to focus on people, getting them together, getting that face time, getting people talking, getting them into rapid feedback cycles, getting them used to the idea of actually reviewing their work and making change, connecting them with the end users. They have got to talk with the people who they're creating things for and getting that connection, get that feedback, and then getting them into the idea of responding to change. So really common that we're going to make a plan, we're going to figure out exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to follow that plan for the next 5 years. And that that's not a way for continuous improvement. All right, so what's the really big painful thing that we are focusing on right now? A big painful thing that our staff have to do is make big reports, big gray literature reports. And man, that is, it's very inefficient, and it's fundamentally unreproducible, if you're perfectly honest. And why is that? Well, first up, you got so much data coming in, okay? And I didn't put up there all the issues about making sure that data is reproducible and understandable in the future. Karen already covered that, but there's another gray box there. But once you get the data and you're coming in, you've got all these analyses. Some of these are manual, many of these are manual, undocumented manipulations, so many different files in different formats, spreadsheets coming in left and right with file names that are version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Scripts, various analyses, emails. Oh, so many Google Docs. We get to use Google Drive. I know some agencies don't. We do. And oh, so many folders. Yeah, it just creates this whole process that even though you are trying to document everything, you are trying so hard, but ultimately at the end, it's really hard to come back and reproduce it. Maybe you can reproduce it in 6 months when you have the same staff. What happens 2 years later when the staff has rotated over? It's just, I mean, if you're really honest, it's unreproducible. And that's hard, but it's also really soul crushing. And why is it soul crushing? Because that data are going to be updated and you are going to remake that stupid 3-page table so many times. If you've ever been involved in these big reports, oh, it'll kill you how many times you need to redo that thing. So here's our staff, right? They're stuck in the Dagobah swamp of the big reports going through the meat grinder, and the science team is going through that meat grinder too. Horribly, there's a lot of dark clouds that are going to make this even harder. I mentioned climate change. More data, all these new data streams coming into our model is so much more work. The staff are already, I mean, they're just working so hard. Like the idea, like, oh, more work? Are you serious? We have retirements leading to a loss of knowledge and capacity. So a lot of like hard things, but there's really good news. And that is, we know how to create reproducible science workflows. That big gray box, that green big box does not have to be. We know how to do it. And we have teams in our own agency who do it great. You're going to hear about the FIMS team, the Fisheries Information Services, systems. They have great teams who are doing this. We have teams that do it. We have workshops that have gone over exactly how to do it. We have teams that know the skills, right? But when you look across the whole agency, we have a few communities that are doing this. We need to figure out how to spread this. And we have seen, this is an example of a marine mammal team who was doing this manual stock assessment reports for each individual species. And they went through the training I'm going to talk about in reproducible workflows, and they transformed how they're doing it. And I was just like, oh, you can hear their voices. They're so happy. They're like, wow, this is just great. And they get more collaborative. They're loving the work. So that's good. And so afterwards, here they are, woo, the big reports coming out of the swamp. So it's good. But this is me. I'm here. Okay, that's nice. But how do we make this go viral? Spread. Because individually training each team, we got a lot of teams, and then also we have people leaving, right? So it's like there's churn. So like we got to make it go viral. So that is the point of this line of effort. And we have sort of three elements. And one is we've been working the last 3 years with Openscapes, who has been running these trainings for us. This training's not the right word. It's facilitated teamwork, helping teams work on their workflow. And then also we need to work on their skills, specific skills, and then platforms. So let me go briefly over each of these. So first off, why Openscapes? If you go to the posters, you're going to hear about the NASA Openscapes. I've been working with them a lot. And so one of the things I have discovered over the 3 years of working with Openscapes is, it really pays to hire the professionals. I'm a scientist. I am not like a team facilitator. I can kind of learn to do it, but it works a lot better if you hire people who are really good at this. So that's part of it. And then it's also getting that collaboration across the federal agencies. We're all working on this. We learn from each other. We learn so much from seeing what the NASA Openscapes mentors have been doing, the decisions they've made, and it all gets kind of synergistic. It's really fun to see. So as I said, we've been working with Openscapes the last 3 years, kind of building the base, knowing that we wanted to really expand this. And so now we're going, and it started grassroots. Somebody asked, hey, how did you get buy-in? Well, we didn't have buy-in. We did not. And if we had waited for buy-in, it wouldn't have happened. The scientists said, hey, we want to spend our training money on this. We need to learn these things. So yeah, we just got started, and then we started lobbying our leadership a lot, just constantly lobbying them. All right, so going ahead, we have another 3 years coming up. It's a headquarters initiative, and has a lot of new components to it. And one of the new components is, like, before we were doing these team-based facilitated workflow things, like 10-week things that I'll describe. And now we are going into a mentor framework where we have so it's based similar, if you're familiar with NASA, it's going to be similar to that, where we have this mentor group at each of our science centers, our regional offices, our headquarters offices. And then this mentor group are identifying what the local needs are and making decisions. Where should we really focus our effort? Because we want them to tell us what are the problems we need to work on now. What's the really, I could make a guess, but they are there. And so they're going to be the ones identifying what we really need to work on. So like, here's examples, this is some slides from Julie, actually from the NASA mentors. they identify the needs locally. I think this is a really important concept if you're thinking about organizational change. Get those local people. And I will say, don't give up about finding the local people. You start offering things, and you need to offer it to maybe, 40 people, and you'll hope that in those 40 people, you're going to find 1 or 2 people who are like, I'm passionate. And so you need to get that word out there. So we're holding workshops and doing these trainings, and people would kind of percolate up, and we'd talk, and we'd be like, they seem really excited about that. And you identify that person really has that fire to help move things forward. And those become your mentors who are your locally moving things forward. Okay. Oops. Okay, great. So that's a key thing, having these local mentor groups. And I mentioned that it's really important to break down these barriers of information. So moving forward, we're going to be focusing also on having these local Openscapes groups who are working on like the data analytics, having them collaborate with our local data governance teams. So our data governance teams are worried about like, how do we make this reproducible data and deal with all those data issues? And we need to get these 2 people talking together, and they're going to be able to accomplish a lot more if they're working together. So that's a goal there. And like I said, people and interactions, getting the face time. Do find like sometimes people are like, what exactly are you covering in these co-work sessions? And like, well, I don't know ahead of time. They're going to talk, and we have a facilitated discussion they go through. But when you get passionate people together, like they just come up with things they want to work on, and you need to find those people who are driven, and they like. Once they get around each other, they're like, oh, wow, we could solve this together. So that's a really cool aspect. So we will continue these team-based programs also. This has been absolutely instrumental in helping teams make change. They can feel really absolutely stuck in their workflows. So I told you that meat grinder. And so this program, it's 10 weeks, it's facilitated sessions where they work with the Openscapes facilitators, and then they work on their own, and they do things like this. So starting over here, this is kind of where they are. Red is their honest discussions about things that are non-reproducible and problematic and introducing all sorts of errors. And then they talk about where they want to go to over here. And then they figure out what are things that we could realistically do to start making things better. They need to start improving and not get so depressed about how far they are from their goals. Here's another team. This is this team. This is one of our integrated ecosystem assessment teams. They totally redesigned their whole workflow. It was like amazing to watch. It's just in 2 months, actually. All right. And then, so that's like the people side. We have also identified that we have a lot of needs for training. A lot of our staff, they got their graduate degrees quite a while ago. They might not have had training in R or Python, experience with Jupyter Hub, R Studios, So we need to have a data science, we need to devote time to that, and we need leadership to understand that staff have to have time to work on that. They just got to update their skills. Training in big data, we have a lot of different types of big data, and we're going to have to give them training in that also. And then also a component of diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility in data science. We'll be partnering with Openscapes. They have a Pathways to Open Science program that was actually started by Ileana Finwick, who I went through the first Openscapes cohort with. It was kind of fantastic. And I remember pointing her out, it was at ESIP 2 years ago. And she said, I had so much, like, wow, I have so many ideas. And then she started this fantastic Pathways to Open Science with Black and marine science and Black women in ecology, evolution, and marine science. And so we're going to be doing some joint activities with them. And I think, okay, yeah, just about done here. And then structural barriers. This has come up a lot And I'm sure if at other federal agencies, you know what I'm talking about, where like people just can't get the software they need. They can't get the access to the platforms they need to get their work done. And it can be really demoralizing to individuals when they're said like, no, you can't install that. Like, wow, I need this to do my work. So, but working together as a group, we have been effective at advocating for the things we need, and things that people thought were impossible, we've been able to do. For example, a GitHub enterprise for our agency. All right, so now I'm going to hand off to the last one, to Elizabeth, who's going to talk about some of the challenges of getting our models climate ready. So, yes. All right. And okay. I also want to mention on Elizabeth's slides, you're going to see the link to the number for the Slido. So please go on there and add your comments and questions. When we get to the Q&A after Elizabeth's talk, we'll have an open discussion.
Hi, everyone. Nobody told me we were giving bios. So I do not have one, but hopefully a brief bio of me is that I started off with NOAA while doing my master's thesis. So at the beginning of that in 2016, working on deep sea coral ecology, mostly with climate change with marine heat waves in California. Got contract job with NOAA right after that. And then for a variety of reasons, ended up at NESDIS, where I spent times learning, like going from zero to satellite savvy. So having to ask the questions of what is the difference between a polar and a geostationary satellite? There I was a database manager, more like a database janitor, for a like systems database that NOAA has. And while I was there, a previous coworker of mine, who's the database manager of the deep sea coral database, exposed me to Fisheries, our user group. So I am probably the direct result of a lot of Eli's work. And I saw that and came to realize that Fisheries was probably the place to go for the things that I was interested in. I loved coding in R and wanted to become better at it. I also was kind of over satellites and really wanted to get back to what I got my degree in, which was in marine biology. So me coming to Fisheries is probably a direct result of that, and wanting that professional development and to be around people that were as enthusiastic to become open science data scientists within marine ecosystems. And so today I'm going to talk about some of the work that I've done since coming to Fisheries back in November. I'm contracted to the National Stock Assessment Program, and this presentation is specifically on the climate ready fisheries and ecosystems models, which Eli alluded to, specifically as related to stock assessments. So NIMS is, or fisheries, whichever people are preferring to call it at that point in time, is provided the authorization to conduct stock assessments through the Magnuson-Stevens Act, or the MSA. It doesn't explicitly mandate assessments, unlike the Marine Mammal Protection Act, but it does use language that implies that these assessments are necessary by a National Fisheries Management Program through National Standards 1, 2, and 3, which are on the slides. The first one, to prevent overfishing while achieving optimum yield, to have best science information available, and to manage an individual stock, and well, that shall be managed as a unit throughout its range. I had to go from not only zero to satellite savvy to zero to stock assessment savvy as of late. So if you aren't familiar with stock assessments, you are where I was in November. So the purpose of stock assessments is to measure stock status relative to defined limits and to project harvest levels at optimum yields, prevent overfishing, and rebuild depleted stocks. And this process is done by collecting, analyzing, and reporting demographic information to determine the effects of fishing and other drivers. This process includes so much to it. I cannot reiterate how much goes into stock assessments. So make sure to follow all of the limits that are provided to you, because you have no idea how much math goes into it. So this includes catch, which is total removals due to fishing over time, which includes commercial landings, recreational landings, discards and releases, and research removals. There's also abundance, which is the relative changes in stock size over time. Most of this is gotten through surveys. And then there is the biology, which is the growth, reproduction, and natural deaths. And biology is a key input because it helps determine the level of productivity that a population can support. And this is obtained through scientific surveys and observer programs, port sampling, and research and tagging studies. These all go into the stock assessment model, and this estimates time series of stock size and mortality. And other things that go into this are habitat, climate, ecosystem, and man-made stress information, all in a variety of different ways, depending on that particular model and what those stock assessment scientists are able to bring in. These go into things such as the outputs of that model go into things such as status. Is a fishery overfished, or is overfishing happening? As well as forecasts, which are the acceptable biological catch. And that forecast is incorporating socioeconomics. So things that aren't exactly determined by biology alone are going into that forecast. Most of today's stock assessment models work as computer simulations of fish populations, and the most complete assessment model is called an integrated analysis model, which is composed of the 3 model layers that you see in the slide. With the population model, this computes the essential population factors such as stock abundance, mortality, growth, reproduction, and movement for each year, typically during the past several decades. Then you have the observation model, which creates predictions from the population model of data, including survey abundance index, catch, fish size, and age composition, and others as available. And then there is the statistical model, which compares the data predictions to the data observations and adjusts the factors in the population and observation model to achieve the best possible match to all the data. Wow, isn't that a lot that goes into those stock assessments? And so how closely a fish stock assessment model fits the actual data indicates the reliability of the historical estimates and future predictions for a fish stock. This is a lot of information that goes into that, and I'm always impressed by that fact. So just to kind of give you an example as it relates to a bit of climate-related things in terms of integrated analysis models is that, or IAs, they allow for inclusion of environmental and ecosystem factors already to a certain extent in stock assessment models. And this helps the scientists better understand historical stock changes and improve forecasts. One of these examples is about flatfish in the Bering Sea, which are affected by bottom water temperatures. You can see the plot on the side. Pulled this from one of the stock assessments I was able to find for a flatfish in the Bering Sea, and colder water influences the timing of spawning migrations, and this plot shows kind of those migrations and slows activity, making fish less likely to be caught in survey trawls. And so the modeling relationship between the bottom temperatures and survey catchability for these species improves the fit to the survey biomass estimates and reduces overall uncertainty in the model. So having this environmental data is really important to stock assessment because it provides a better fit, and that's all what we want. So one of the most well-known of these integrated assessment models thus far is stock synthesis, which is what I personally work the most with. Stock synthesis is an integrated analysis model built in 1984 and recoded. It was built in Fortran, FYI, and recoded in 2003 using C++ with Automated Differentiated Model Builder, or AD Model Builder. It is one of the most flexible IA models that we have right now, and it integrates many sources of data depending on if you know how to integrate that well. And it can work very well from very simple to very complex models, depending on the type of data that you have and how long your fishery has been going on. And it's very widely used. Hundreds of stocks are assessed with stock synthesis from all over the world. We have people using it in Japan, we have people using it in Australia and in Europe and so many other places. And because it's been around for so long, it evolves from decades of development and exploration, and being available and having that code and people using it for so long and in so many places has allowed it to develop these features that have made it even more usable to the people that are using it. Some of the more recent developments within stock synthesis is that we have a GitHub repository for the code as well as other things around it. That QR code is one for the GitHub repository. You're just going to see a lot of C++ code, as well as if you meander around the organization, you'll find documentation as well as some of the test models that we use. We rely a lot off of GitHub Actions, and we're all using issues both that we put in there as well as that the users put in there, trying to migrate us over towards public discussions, because they used to be in, well, they still are in VLab. But wanting to bring them a bit more over to the GitHub side of things. There's also a lot of R packages that stock assessment scientists within NOAA, and I'm sure outside of NOAA, have developed to help work with reading input into stock synthesis, and more so reading output and plotting the output of stock synthesis so that it can be directly input into stock assessment papers, the stock assessment documents that are going to provide a lot of the decisions by management that Eli was talking about. Like, there are many pipeways that aren't very automated, and so these packages allow the stock assessment scientists to create those plots that can be directly imported. They also allow for some simulations so that stock assessment scientists can use different options and see how that's going to affect the model. And then there's some diagnostics. There's also a lot of national and international trainings on stock synthesis. My boss, another person, and then a collaborator from Sweden are all going to be going to Copenhagen in September for an ICES, or International Council for Exploration of the Sea, training course in stock synthesis, where most of those people will be stock synthesis beginners. And with stock synthesis, we've learned a lot about IA models and how to do them in an open science way, but we want to increase the flexibility of these models, taking what we've learned from stock synthesis and bringing it to a more flexible and modular integrated model that will be able to incorporate climate factors. And so why do we need climate-ready stock assessments? The climate change is destabilizing ocean ecosystems. We see that in a way that fish populations are no longer stationary. They're moving around. We see them migrating north. We see them not spawning in places that they used to spawn, etc. We also need to adapt existing management procedures to be successful in a dynamic and non-stationary environment. So these fish are moving. And we need to allow variability in human and environmental processes within assessment models. And operational stock assessment software must be flexible and extensible to accommodate existing best practices and also future innovations. And that's the key one that the team that I work with is working on now, is the software. So what will a climate-ready model look like? And it needs to incorporate climate and ecosystem. It has to be an integrated analysis model, and it also has to incorporate human dimensions. So this model is FIMS, or the Fisheries Integrated Model System, which is a flexible suite of software tools to support sustainable fishery management. That QR code will take you to the GitHub page for FIMS. So FIMS is a suite of generalized tools with population dynamics and stock assessments at its core. It has a modular, flexible design that connects ecosystem and climate and economic models and data using complementary tools. This is coordinated in a centralized effort with a project manager and a core group of programmers working with the Office of Science and Technology within Fisheries. And the project includes participants from each of the fisheries science centers. There's so many people that are collaborating and contributing to FIMS, as well as people that are outside NOAA that are able to contribute to the process. And these efforts address a lot of priorities, including a next generation stock assessment improvement plan. There's an ecosystem-based fishery management roadmap, and from the findings of a workshop on next generation stock assessment models. This is my last slide, just so that you have the QR code and can explore the FIMS repository. And with that, I think that we're able to look at the Slido questions if we have too much time. We have about 5 minutes, so.
Yeah, so I thought with the 5 minutes, we'll start with the top 2 questions, which are kind of the same. And yeah, and so Melissa, could you? Well, I don't know. I guess I may be answering questions here. Okay. Oh, wait, where's mine? Okay. So the question on the Slidos, can you, so there's 2 and they're related. Can you share details about how you secured leadership buy-in? What did that look like? How does one go about establishing a data culture? Is this goal short or long-term? And how do you get staff buy-in? So one's like leadership buy-in, the other's staff buy-in. Karen, you can think while I'm talking. So I thought I'd answer first because you can talk more about the data governance buy-in. So I will say that for the staff buy-in, I guess I look at that as I think the staff already buy in, like they are federal scientists, so they're not going to be like, this is my data and you can't have it. I mean, we're federal scientists, everything we do is public. It's, you know, I can't copyright anything, I can't be paid, you know, for, you know, like, you know, writing a book or anything. Like we are public servants, right? So I think they already have the buy-in. So how I look at it is I like, okay, so if I have a group of people who are not engaging in this case, like, you know, good data governance or open science, why is that? Like, and I ask them, well, what are the barriers to you to do this? Maybe it's not that they don't have buy-in, but they just can't. And a lot of them are like, because my supervisor will not give me any time to learn things. That's a pretty common thing. So like, that's not because they don't have buy-in, because they can't. Or IT will not allow me to install software. And people end up wasting, you know, 10, 20% of their time and a great deal of psychic energy of trying to navigate red tape that seems really just pointless. So it can be things like that, or it can be, hey, I want to do data governance, but I don't have the time, I don't understand how to do it, I need help, I don't know how to get help. It can be things like that. So that's what I would say about the staff buy-in. Like, think about, ask them what the barriers are. Maybe they have barriers. In terms of the leadership buy-in, for this Openscape stuff, that staff training, a lot of it was getting the people who are passionate, giving talks, writing blogs, talking to their local leadership, and just being relentless, not giving up, talking about how much they needed this. Yeah.
When you're,
Yeah.
when you're ready, I have a couple things I
Please.
can say about
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
So, again, if in terms of the data vision, when we got leadership buy-in, we were actually able to present to our like head administrators. To do that, you know, you need to get time on their schedules. So be persistent. Kind of don't take no for an answer, but make sure you have someone on your team that can do that. We were working with, you know, the director of Office of Science and Technology, so that helped to get us that face time. But also what was really important is we just kept drafting, like draft after draft, to get that vision really tight and really think of who your audience is. You know, we're like, what will our What will our regulatory lead be interested in? What will our science lead be interested in? What will the overall administrator be interested in? Really hone it to your audience and have that, something that's going to bring everybody in and make that, it's just drilling, making a really tight kind of statement that is going to reach your audience. And I'm happy to I can talk about this a lot. So if you want to talk more, I'm happy to talk more.
Did you want to add anything?
Sure. On the getting buy-in for data governance at fisheries, it was not completely easy. I should say a lot of the things that Eli is talking about apply. I think there was much more energy at the operational level because of the pain points that people had, which we've covered today. But eventually you hone a message to leaders and can call out their major pain points, and they're tired of it. For us, a very valuable but horrifying experience was the first effort with PAR, public access to research results. It was traumatic, and we didn't want to go through that again. And so it's like, okay, what are those foundational things that we can do to prevent that experience again? And data governance really is sort of the secret sauce to do that. So hone your message and know who you're talking to.
Okay, I'm looking at the time here. 5:31. Okay, so it's 5:31, and if we can go over, okay, yeah. So I can take another question from Slido. And if you want to leave, please do not be shy. It is 5:30. So I can look up another question of Slido, but if you have a burning question that you didn't want to enter on there, please raise your hand.
I put it in Slido, but I'm wondering if you could talk about rapid change cycles in government specifically, because I think it's really hard to get feedback or fail quickly and know you're failing quickly and kind of iterate on that. So I'm wondering if you could talk about what you did to accomplish that.
To accomplish that. So we've had, I would say we've had some teams that have been successful with that. I think that would be like, I said that we have a few teams that are, really successful with these ideas, and that these sort of rapid cycles, I would definitely fall into that category of a few teams. I think, as we go forward, it's going to be just a lot more practice for teams of actually doing this, like doing these trainings, get into the habit. I kind of see it as, it's changing your workflow, getting into a new habit. And in the beginning, that habit's going to feel awkward. And I think for me as a trainer, it is trying out some different ideas and figuring out, okay, what are the things that I can get teams to do that sort of get that flywheel going? In my experience, the easiest thing is stand-ups, getting that check-in. If I can get them to talk on a regular basis. Right now, you can kind of get teams to talk on a 1 week cycle, and that is really exceedingly slow. So it's getting teams to talk a little more often. And thinking about it, I don't know. So we have teams. So a lot of times what's happening is we have staff who are spread over multiple projects, right? So they feel like, yeah, 1 week is good. because I'm spread over 7 different projects. But we know when we have staff who are working like that, they're very inefficient. Because you can't get into these kind of rapid cycles of work. They keep having to spin it. We just know that that kind of spreading yourself out is really slow. And I think for me, it's going to be getting teams to start experimenting. And it may be during these short 2-month things, just say, hey, try a check-in, and getting them to learn basic ideas about how to do a check-in. That's really simple. So that's one thing. Maybe experimenting with asynchronous check-ins, getting teams to lots of examples of teams like successfully using issues and discussions. So that's another kind of like asynchronous check-in. Having them try out just basic ideas of creating a short task. So right now, teams create month-long, 3-month-long task, and getting them into the habit of creating a task they can complete quickly and get some feedback on. So that's how I'm kind of approaching it. It's going to be a lot of experimentation. By the way, if you went into software, all software teams work in these like quick cycles, and they didn't do this 20 years ago. So if you think like change is not possible, that is not true. Change is possible, and we have seen change happen. Yep.
Hopefully this is a quick answer. I live in the last mile world, connecting with users, connecting with, bringing new data to people so they can assess whether it's going to be useful for them or not. Have you taken any efforts to connect with your I guess partners or customers, the ones that are out there fishing, to socialize this revolutionary change? I mean, congratulations within fisheries. I think it's awesome. That may lead to an app for them to enter their data into, so it can go into a database and you can process that information faster. It can go into models faster. Have you started to socialize that with them, that you're really taking a data approach that would ultimately help their business, give them better information that they can make better decisions, save fuel, be more efficient, and reach their limits faster so they can get to market?
You want to speak on that, Karen? You want to speak on it? Yeah.
I can say something real quick, and then if I miss something, y'all can fill in. Luckily, we've already started doing that. Like, we already have apps. There are different, there's apps that fishermen can access on their phones. There are like BTR systems where there's computers on boat and it feeds the information pretty quickly. If not real, I'm not sure if we're real time yet, but pretty quickly. So there are, but it can be very sector by sector. So there are sectors that, they've been doing it already. But we still need to, in terms of socializing the vision overall, we're still kind of socializing it within NIMS right now. But that'll definitely be a step, I think, is to, and then also we have, in terms of fishery no, this is fisheries dependent. There's a electronic monitoring. So they'll actually have cameras on board, and the folks that are responsible for that program will actually meet with the fishermen and socialize it and teach them how to use it. So we do have programs like that already where we are doing that. Did I miss anything? We're good. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we are moving in that direction. And I would say like an interesting thing that happens too is that once you create something, you change your user, right? Your user exposed to a new app, and then what they want and what they think is possible changes. So yeah, it's going to be interesting in the next few years as we roll out more of these and as our user desires change. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right, thanks, everyone. Enjoy the research showcase.